So Anthony Brindisi, you probably know, is running against Claudia Tenney. The national level of the Sierra Club has endorsed him. He's not on our list because he's not endorsed by us. We endorse the local candidates, so, but we don't want to forget him. So thanks, Alan. Why don't we get Donna up and you kind of say what you would like to. You know the race here, and she's a former Broome County Legislature. There, you got to talk to the mic.
Hi, everybody. First of all, thanks for doing this. Thanks for coming out and showing interest in people who are stepping up to run. Am I in the right area? Sure.
That's good. That's good.
If I just sort of run back and forth, will I mess you up? Okay. Anyway, thanks for taking the time. This is a really obviously important election. You don't need me to review that with you. We're all very painfully aware of it. And thank you to the candidates who went through this process, all of you, the incumbents. I see one at least here, and maybe there are more. These are kind of treacherous times, aren't they? And you and I have been at this for a very long time together. I don't need to name names, but we've been at this a very, very long time. And I guess I want to just give you a couple of big picture remarks and then a couple of small picture remarks. The first is that we are, I guess, I'm trying to find a way to describe this, two stories, one of fear and I guess one of hope. And the one of fear goes like this. I approached a 30-year-old person today and I said, you know, we know each other a long time. How come you haven't brought up this UN climate report, which says the planet may have just another 20 years, right? You're all, I'm sure you're totally aware of this. I said, how come you haven't mentioned it? Somebody I work closely with. And he said, I said, you have a young daughter. Aren't you worried? I said, she'll be in college when this is predicted. And he looked at me and he said, I guess it's out of sight, out of mind. This is a 30-year-old person who's got an out of sight, out of mind attitude, right? And we've been at this for so long in terms of Earth Day. Many of us helped found the local Earth Day group. We've been at this in so many ways, and we've had successes. I see Suzy Ryan's here, who's a candidate who was in the beginning of the recycling and all of what we did in this town. And so, I don't know about you, but I'm kind of afraid. I'm afraid that it's not a higher priority. I'm afraid that it's not a bigger conversation. So the hope comes, I'm going to try my best at the hope part here, is that we have an opportunity to really make a difference. We really can elect some people at all different lanes of government who really get this. I know this isn't just a priority for me because I'm speaking to you. This is a priority regardless of who I'm talking to. This is major. Without this, all the rest of it is really kind of a moot point, to be honest with you. We have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time and do all the rest of it, but this has got to be the highest priority. My main goal is to wake people up to it. So what we need to do is obviously elect people who get it, and these people you're going to talk to tonight do. And I support them, and I'm very happy that they're going to try their best. Now, at the state level, you all know I co-sponsor the Climate Protection Act. We've passed it in the Assembly. Maybe we'll have greater luck in the Senate. Is it a perfect bill? No. Does it need some improvements? No doubt about it. But if we have a reality of passing it, I think we'll be able to attach the budget numbers to it to at least get it started. Locally, there's one thing this county legislature can do and has not, and has failed to do for the last 3 years, is to pass a simple resolution saying that they are a climate-friendly municipality, or what's the exact word? Climate smart community. Climate smart community, not rocket science. 217 other communities around the state have done it. City of Binghamton, Village of Whitney Point. They can just pass a simple resolution which makes them eligible to apply for a certain pool of funding, which is very helpful when you're trying to change things for the better, in terms of resilience, in terms of sustainability. all the things we care about. So, to be honest with you, as old friends, I am afraid that we're not getting the awareness out, but I'm hopeful that these people you're going to meet tonight will really help us deliver some better policies. The Lord knows we need it. In Washington, things are very, very grim indeed. But with Anthony Brindisi behind us on that issue, I'm very, very confident. I'll tell you one quick personal story, and then I'll let the others speak. When Anthony Brindisi and I were talking about who would run for Congress, because there were a lot of people who felt that I was very strong in Binghamton and he was strong in Utica. And that's true. And I said, Anthony, I really enjoy what I'm doing in the Assembly. I really, I think the community benefits from my seniority. I said, I know it's not going to be easy for you to do this. You have to give up your seat. You have to be away from your children. I said, but I'm not lying. This is exactly what I said. But Anthony, you need to do this for the planet. It's that big a mission. You've got to go for the planet. Help save the world on climate and all the things that we all care about. So he said, I'm thinking I'm going to do it. I'm thinking I'm going to do it. I said, just do it, damn it, because we need your help there. So anyway, personal story, personal point of privilege. I wanted to speak ahead of time, just maybe to set a tone. But these people are well-intentioned, and we all need all the help we can get. Time to roll up our sleeves. Thanks a lot.
Now I want to introduce Alan Hochberg, our political chair, and Alan has done all the hard work to make these endorsements happen. And besides the questionnaire, we have to pass this on to the higher level, and Alan managed all that. The statewide chapter then looks at our endorsements, and they're not. But anyways, Alan's going to then introduce each of the candidates, and I'm going to hand the mic over to Alan. So we'll have you introduce Mark Bordeau to start, and
I didn't have too much to say,
Hi, Mark.
well, hi, Mark, to start, and I've met him several times at the Brindisi fundraiser yesterday, and at the PAF Political Action Committee also endorsed him, and he's always been informative, and I've enjoyed listening to him. So,
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. I want to first thank you very much for the endorsement. It's an honor and a privilege to be here, to talk to you tonight. So thank you for that. Thank you for what you do for the community each and every day. We really appreciate it. Really quick background about who I am. I was born and raised in Messina, New York. My mom and dad, my dad worked for Reynolds Metals for 30 years, creating aluminum. He worked in the pot room, melting the aluminum, making it and forming it again for over 30 years. Moved to Watertown in '85. I graduated from SUNY Canton with a degree in hospitality management. In 1990, I became a school lunch director in a small town near Watertown, New York. Moved here in '99 when I became school lunch director for Binghamton City Schools. And now I work with all 15 school districts in Broome and Tioga County, overseeing the school lunch programs. I am also president-elect for New York School Nutrition Association, and I'll be president in 2019 and 20 for the National Association. Longtime volunteer, Food Bank Southern Tier. I've been with the Food Bank for 9 years now as a board member. And my expertise, you can hear a lot of great information about people's expertise in climate and energy savings. I have two areas of expertise I feel that I can add value at a county level in. And one is I was an energy educator for Susquehanna Valley Central School for 9 years. And what does that mean? It means that we try to change behaviors with all the staff at Susquehanna Valley. We try to do modifications as far as making sure lights are off, computers are off, fans are off at night, heat turns down to 55 at night. If equipment's not working efficiently, we train staff on proper cleaning of equipment, how to repair equipment. And through that time, over 9 years, we reduced energy costs by 23% at Susquehanna Valley. It was a tremendous effort. I ended up actually working myself out of a job because they did such a great job there. But some of the numbers. Over the 9 years, we reduced or avoided using about 3 million kilowatt hours of electricity, which is a tremendous amount of electricity over those 9 years. To give you perspective, that's about 4.5 million pounds of carbon dioxide that we took out of the air because of that. That equals about 423 cars annually taken off the road. And so just tremendous savings there. Other part of my passion is food. Tremendous advocate for local purchasing of food. I was fortunate enough to I was able to write, inform, educate, lobby, advocate, and get passed the most comprehensive farm-to-school bill in the nation. If every one of our school districts in the state took advantage of this program, it would bring back into local dollars $100 million back to the farmer. And you take that out to impacting the economy, it's about 1.6 to 2.2 multiplier effect. You're talking almost $200 million coming back to the local economy for farm to school incentives. Really proud of very proud of it. It really impacts the children's health, impacts the local economy, impacts the farmer, and impacts our earth. Really buying local. You're not buying stuff from California, Colorado, Washington. We're buying it here local. So all those trucks are not coming across country and wasting energy. We're supporting our local dollars, and we're protecting the planet. Another thing I just want to talk about is we're looking at ways to reduce food waste. 1/3 of the food produced in our country or in the world ends up in our landfill. So we need to talk about that. That needs to be part of our conversation, is ways to reduce food waste. I think, just imagine what we could do if we reduce that by half. The amount of impact we would have on our local health, our local environment. One thing is, if I become legislator, that I'd like to see is we don't have a standing committee in agriculture. I talked about the importance of agriculture in our community and what it could do for our environment. It's a tremendous economic impact as well as the environment. We need to talk about agriculture and how can we keep stuff local here. I think that's very important. And those are my expertise that I'd like to bring to the county legislator. I think those are key factors of climate smart communities as well. So I think that's the impact I could have in those areas. So thank you again for your time. I appreciate it and look forward to questions at the end. Thank you very much.
Bridget's up next. I want to give special thanks to Bridget. I've met her at several indivisible meetings, and she really deserves a lot of the credit for having all these people here. She helped encourage them to fill out the questionnaire and coordinate the whole process. She's very enthusiastic and a big help throughout the whole process. So looking forward to hearing her speak.
Thank you so much, Alan and Scott, for all of your help through this process and for the endorsement. I'm very, very happy and excited to have it. My name is Bridget Kane, and I'm running for Broome County Legislature here in District 6. It starts at the other side of Nanticoke. So it's right across the street, and it goes west to the Tioga line, to the Broome-Tioga County line. So it's West Endicott and West Corners. I am not born and raised here. I chose to live here 15 years ago. My husband and I, after a couple of personal incidences at the beginning of the last decade, we decided to move. And I knew I wanted to stay in New York. I just knew I needed to get out of the city and into upstate. And we drove all over upstate New York, and we chose right here in this area, in the southern tier. We lived in Owego and owned a house there, and now I live here in Endicott and West Corners. Both of my children went to high school here, and they both went to SUNY College, and I went to the College of Staten Island when I lived down in Staten Island before I lived here. We love this area. It's absolutely beautiful. There's no comparison. It's the most beautiful area in the state of New York, and we've fallen in love with it, the four of us. And my children don't even want to leave. I mean, they're teaching here. They want to stay here. They don't want to go back. I came to this issue, environmental issues and the importance of it on a very personal level. And, you know, Donna was talking about her staffer, her 30-year-old staffer. Well, I was the same way. I had a house in Staten Island with my husband and my children, and we owned that house for 5 years, and after 5 years I became very, very ill. The person that owned the house before me, the woman that owned it before me, that was my sister-in-law, she became very, very ill. My next-door neighbor was very, very ill. A couple of other people on the block were very ill. Then I discovered that my next-door neighbor, my attached neighbor, she was very, very ill. And there was only 3 women that owned my home. The first owner, my sister-in-law, and me. My neighbor up the block called me and she said, the first owner of your home is very, very ill. So I started thinking, because I was very healthy until I got very, very ill. You know, I was a marathon runner, I was a biker, I worked full-time at a law firm in downtown Manhattan, and I had 2 children and a husband, and I took care of all of this, and I had all of this energy, and I was in perfect health until one day I wasn't. And I started making the connections. And our homes were not built on good land. There was a lot of trash, there was a lot of dumping that went on there before these homes were built in this neighborhood. And that's how I came to this. So when I moved up here, we lived in Owego, and I became the secretary of RAFT, Residents Against Fracking Tioga, because that's a big thing I have, is that you can't stick that stuff into the ground and expect it not to hurt us. It's gonna hurt us. It's going to hurt the water table, it's going to hurt the land that we're growing our fruits and vegetables and our plants on, and it's going to hurt the people that are living on it. And so I did that. I was also a part of BRISC until I got into this end of things. I decided that I could make more change if I was elected. So I decided that that's what I was going to do. I'm very upset with this, with these smart energy communities that our current members of our legislature, they're not doing the right thing. I want to see more renewable energy in our community. And it has the added benefit of being economically smart, you know. It creates jobs, and it's good for our environment and for our planet. It's a no-brainer to me. And that's one of the main reasons why I'm running. It's what I do. It's the main reason why I do what I do, is to support the environment and to make the planet a safe place for my children and, you know, hopefully my grandchildren. And anyway, thank you so much for your time and for your endorsement. I'm really grateful to you.
So next up is Jason Shaw, and I think what comes across very clear with Jason is his passion and his knowledge of environmental issues. His questionnaire he sent to us is very impressive, his broad range of knowledge. And I think one thing I got to praise him for is he's really great about accessibility. Whenever I've called him, he's gotten back with me like within minutes or even an hour. So
Thank you.
And so we're looking to, I'm looking forward to hearing him speak here.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, and thank you everyone for having me. Thank you for your endorsement. Thank you for everything everyone does. Everyone else has given a little bit about themselves. I should go back to where I start from. I actually was born in Endicott, grew up in Vestal, went to Binghamton University. Then at the end of university, I decided to move to California, and I moved to Berkeley. I worked for the Department of Energy there, and I worked at one of the labs, just as an intern. I mean, I would love to say that the lab was like transformative. It was actually very boring. So I got another job, but I stayed in Berkeley. And I think it's Berkeley that really had a lot of effect upon me. It is, anyone who knows of or has been to it, it's a unique community that really thrives on appreciating the environment. Moved to Oakland, lived in a house that was right next to like a state park, could go out and eat my cereal in the morning before going to work, on the hiking trails, loved every minute of it. My passion for the environment really comes from the environment. Along the way, I became involved with yoga. That puts you really in touch with how you feel, and I feel better out in the environment. I feel better when the environment feels healthy. I moved back here because my parents own our Country Hearts. They started it 26 years ago. They invited me back about 18 years ago, and I accepted their offer. Since then, we've changed, we've grown. We now employ about 30 people. I would call myself the general manager. My dad would be kind of the board of directors at this point. I've got 30 employees, thousands of customers. I look at Broome County and I see we've got thousands of employees who do many different things for us. Environment, we have so many people who can work on the environment from so many different angles, as well as many other things. We've got a couple 100,000 people here that depend on us for keeping it clean and pleasant. And I see myself as a steward. I'd like to say I'm going in there to change everything. Really, the environment is gorgeous already. We've got our problems. It's like we say in yoga, like you've got everything you need in you. Like, don't beat yourself up over it. Embrace what you have, improve what's there, and move from that point of feeling good about it. My time on the legislature, I've been there for 4 years now. I stepped up and did it because, number one, I had the family support to do it. I had been privy to how it's done as being an intern many years ago for Senator Livingston, who basically told me at the end of his time, he said, "You're a good guy. You should do this." And he, love him or hate him for his politics, I think he was a lovely man who pushed me in the right direction to get out there and hopefully help people. Since then, it is not always easy to be on the legislature. It is trying many times. You've got 15 cats to herd. It really, and you've got a county executive who either opens or closes the door, depending on how they're feeling at that time. It doesn't matter what party you're in. Sometimes it's just the way it works. I was first a member of the CCE, and then I became now a member of the BRISC, who you just mentioned, as well as the EMC, the Environmental Management Council, both of which I found really interesting and a great extension for where I've come. Along the way, I would say my relationship with Jason Garner has pushed me in the direction of understanding the details behind passing a legislation. It's not as easy as just saying, I want to do it. People are always like, why don't you just introduce that thing? Because it will fail. And when it fails, it's usually dead forever. There is nothing worse than putting a nail in the coffin. It will not come back open. That's the problem I see. I generally get things done by working behind the scenes to get people on board. We can all get along. We all love the environment. Even the people who you think might not, they do if you ask them the right way. Take them out on that walking trail. They'll love it too. So one of the big things that we passed early on, I say early, but it took almost 2 years to do, was something called CPACE, which is Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy. It became the basis of one of the action items that we need to do to step up to things like climate smart communities, as well as a few other kind of ratings like this that allow you to access grant money. That was something that we almost all agreed on. In fact, it passed unanimously, and it still took 2 years to do. Okay, so be careful. It takes time, okay? And now, then it went much faster when 2.0 came around, and it improved. My time is running out. So I want to put that out there. I've worked on the solar farm in Conklin, at the Conklin Industrial Park, and recently I've been working with Adam Flint and Gay Cano on going to the agency, which is the old IDA, and trying to get a 25-acre solar farm put at the old BAE site. So I hear some gasps. Believe me, it's a snowball's chance in hell. But we are trying our best, okay? So I think there are great dreams out there, and I want to dream them with you. So thank you for the time. I know my time is up, and I'll let Alan come back.
Okay, so, next up is Suzy Ryan, is that right? Yeah, I think as soon as we got the questionnaire response from Suzy, everybody on our ExCom was really excited about her that she was just a great candidate. Her knowledge, her involvement in environmental issues for well over 20 years, and her responses to the questionnaire were just, very informative, passionate, and I would even say eloquent at times. So we're really excited about having her come here and speak tonight.
I prepared my speech as I listened to my colleagues because I am also, besides teaching environmental studies, I'm also caring for my 80-year-old mother and my 14-year-old daughter, and sometimes things don't always work out as planned. So forgive me if I'm a little unprepared, but I appreciate the endorsement and I appreciate being part of this group and looking around this room. The woman that dragged me into this, Donna Lupardo, who I've worked with since 1990 when we started the Earth Day Southern Tier celebration, which was the 20-year celebration of the first Earth Day, if you all recall, because I look around this room and most of you were there. Julian Shepard, of course, was very much a part of that and always has been. The Earth Day Southern Tier has been going on for now 28 years, one of the longest running Earth Day celebrations in the country. That's pretty amazing, and that has to do with all of you and your commitment to this group and all the groups that you're involved in, so I appreciate that. And it's so much fun to see these things still going on. In my early career, I worked for the county, and I was involved with the riverbank cleanup, which now my kids are involved with the riverbank cleanup. So that's lovely to see them cleaning up the same stretches of river that I cleaned up all those years ago. And we will be cleaning up forevermore. But it's nice to know that 2 tons of trash every year get collected from the riverbank. And it's not only an opportunity to collect the trash, that's really a pittance compared to how much is ending up in our waterways and in our oceans, as we all know. But the education value of that, to see, for example, the 30 students from Seton Catholic Central that cleaned up that stretch of river and saw all the trash that they collected, and then with a bright teacher like Anna Wright to explain to them, this is just one little stretch. Imagine this, on and on and on. So it's an educational opportunity as well. The same with Earth Day, the same with the annual photography contest for Joyce Smith. How many of you are familiar with the annual environmental photography contest? After a wonderful woman, one of my mentors and the first woman to run for mayor in the city of Binghamton. So unfortunately she didn't win, but that's okay because we still honor her every year with that. I also was involved with the recycling program, and as you know, in order to defeat the incinerator, we had to prove that recycling and waste prevention was a better option. And that wasn't easy to do because a lot of people see the short-term gains of a waste-to-energy incinerator. Oh, look, we put it in the burner and it all just goes away. They didn't realize what the impacts would be. They didn't realize, I say to Timmy Griffin now, I say, think about this. If you did not win that election, and you did not fight to defeat that incinerator, we would have become the garbage capital of upstate New York. Do you think Binghamton, New York would then become the jewel of the university system in New York State if that incinerator had been built and it became the #1 garbage disposal place in upstate? I don't think so. So it's so funny, you think about It's a Wonderful Life, what one man can do or what one woman can do. That's what all of you are doing every day by making these changes. You make change into the future, and that's what I hope to do. What else? I would love to see the programs that I did help out with, the recycling, household hazardous waste, our first hazardous waste collection program in the state and actually in the nation. To have a place where you come and bring your hazardous waste as a household or a small business was a new concept. And it allowed people to take care of these wastes in the proper way, and now you see them all over the place. I want to make sure they're working well, like our recycling program. I've moved to Maine for 10 years, worked on the Gulf of Maine ecosystem on an international program, which taught me about data sharing, information sharing, how scientists all over the world can work together to improve one ecosystem at a time. I'm back, I'm teaching environmental studies, I'm serving on the EMC, I'm on the Sustainability Committee, working to get us to be a climate smart community. And I look around, and not only the older people that I've worked with all these years, I'm looking around at Chris Bryson, my treasurer, who just had his first baby and is still being my treasurer. Thank you, Chris Bryson. I'm looking at Amanda Dixon, my student. I'm looking at Maeve, her friend, and I'm saying, we have work to do, and I'm going to do this for you so that then you can carry on the legacy for me after this. And so that's my story. Thank you for the endorsement.
Excited and looked on very favorable about her background in biology and ecology, and her background as an activist and interest in environmental issues. And she was also at the, I've also seen her present before, and she presented well and enthusiastically, so we're looking forward to her talk.
Hi, I'm Karen Beebe, candidate for District 12, which encompasses Port Dickinson, Town of Dickinson, north side of Johnson City. So a little bit about me. I work at UHS. I'm a chemist. I'm a blood banker over there, although my primary degree is in biology with a focus on ecology. I'm a full-time mom to 3 little girls. They're 8, 6, and 3. They are the future. You know, I'm doing this because I'm invested in this community. I'm invested in my children, obviously. My husband's a mailman, and I volunteer on the board of directors at the Shenango Valley Nursery School. I've been co-president there for the last 5 years, and I'll be terming out in 2019. So I was looking for another way to give back to our community that I felt was meaningful. And I had one galvanizing issue that really got me thinking that this was the right direction for me. And it has to do with the compressor station. So I live in Port Dickinson, and there was, I'm sure many of you are aware, that the town of Fenton approved to put in a virtual pipeline natural gas compressor station directly on the Port Dickinson town line. And that proposed site is directly on top of the aquifer, which we draw our water. The Millennium Pipeline runs through there already, so that's already there. But they were going to use some scientific magic, which they never really fully explained, to access the pipeline, compress it on site, and truck it 24/7, 365 on our roadways, by the highway, right by where our children go to school, in the vicinity of the high school and the middle school. And also, that area of Fenton is very residential. So also with it being on the Port Dickinson town line, it was directly next to our park. And we enjoy that park. It's beautiful. It's kind of a little jewel. It's hidden in there. Not a lot of people access it, but it's well maintained. It's gorgeous. This was going to be right there, making noise. There were going to be trucks idling. It was a bad choice. So initially this started May of 2017. The people became aware suddenly when they started construction. Town of Fenton, I don't know how transparent they were with letting the people know that this was happening, but all of a sudden construction's happening and residents are saying, wait a minute, what's going on here? People reached out to me, hey, have you heard about this? This is crazy, I can't believe it. And I was like, okay, this sounds terrible, but I'm not gonna jump on the bandwagon. I need to read. I need to find out what's going on. We need to read these issues. So I got some information. I got on board about August of 2017, and I started going to these Town of Fenton board meetings. Let me tell you about fireworks. It was crazy. It was crazy because I just couldn't believe this is the way elected officials were treating the residents that they were elected to represent. They were dismissive, they were demeaning, they were outright mean, they were very defensive. They I don't think that their intent was to harm the community, but they were not responsive to the outrage. People were mad, and rightfully so. The school board ended up getting involved because it was within the school district, and school buses drive right along that route, and it's right next to the highway. So the school board and some residents sued the town of Fenton. And it went to the zoning board of appeals, went to the Supreme Court, New York State. Long story short, it got shut down. Thank you. It got shut down. Now, do I think it's totally over? No, because I know NG has deep pockets. So we are all keeping an eye on them. People are constantly watching that site. Fenton is trying to redo their zoning. We're keeping our eyes on them. So anyway, all of this said and done, I thought we need to elect officials that are advocates for people in our community, that are advocates for our most vulnerable populations, elderly, children, people of color, LGBTQ, disabled veterans, all soup to nuts. That's not happening. We got to get some officials in there, and why not me? I'm doing it. So here I am. It's my first time running. I appreciate the endorsement. Thank you so much, and I look forward to questions. Thank you.
And our final, but by no means last speaker, Barb Mullen. She hasn't been officially endorsed yet, but we're hoping that'll be pretty soon. I've known Barb for quite a while, well over 10, 15 years from the Psych Center, from her both experience in mental health and human services. And I've always been impressed by her knowledge, her presentation skills, and her enthusiasm. So,
thanks a lot. For my sign. I was out canvassing this evening before I came, and I was knocking on some doors. I've been knocking on doors pretty much since May, and I live in Vestal, so I'm in the 15th district, or the 5th district. One of the 5th district. I'm sorry. It feels like the 15th. Actually, so I've lived out there for over 38 years. I'm from downstate. I grew up in a small town named Hastings-on-Hudson. So I grew up right on the Hudson River, and I actually learned to swim in the Hudson River. I swam with the fishes and swam with the PCPs. Yeah. You know, God knows what I swam with, but there was an awareness even as a child. That part of the Hudson is an estuary, so we swam at high tide, because at low tide you were swimming with raw sewage, or the chemicals from Finzers, or from the GM plant, or Anaconda Wire and Cable, which was directly across the street from me. We had a beautiful view of the Palisades, but we had a river that was dead. And I remember I was working at the marina one summer, and Pete Seeger's boat, the Clearwater, sailed in up the river to pass out literature, and it was a painful moment. I was really enthusiastic. I ran out to the end of the dock and brought the young people up to into the marina to introduce them to the owner, to share the information, and the owner's like, get those pinko commies off my dock. It was like, come on. And it was like, oh my God. So I've lived here for over 38 years, and I live in a rural part, so it's west of African Road, and my district runs to the Tioga border and actually to Pennsylvania, and basically to the river, to Susquehanna. In 11 and 6, our area was really hit very hard, Vestal specifically, by the floods. I'm high enough up so that we weren't really affected by the flooding of the rivers, but NYSEG has somehow figured out that a substation on Castle Garden would be the best place to put one in a flood zone. So consistently what happens to us is we lose electricity for 3 days. So in 11 it was 5 days, and I went out and bought a generator. My school where I was working, Johnson City Middle School, was the Red Cross center, and I somehow made it by going back over the hills through Maine and made it to JC and to help work in the Red Cross Center for our local victims of the flood. And then we had over 40 kids displaced, and through the McKinney-Vento law or act, kids that were displaced and sent to Windsor to live with family or lived in Endicott, we were bringing kids in from all over the county for almost a year that they could not return to their homes. So I think that for myself, this consciousness about climate change is vital. I think that our community in particular has been really affected by the changing of the weather. And we know that there are cycles of the ice age happens every 30,000 years. But the fact that it is accelerating at this point and we're having a challenge to even accept responsibility or to take action is really important. My opponent happens to be the chairman, and he has control over what gets presented as a resolution what gets presented to committees and then move on to be voted on. And he has refused to bring the climate smart community resolution into committee. And that means that we lose access to grants that help mitigate funding that would help with the flooding and the climate changes. So I feel strongly that my candidacy and your endorsement are really important to our community. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to ask all of our candidates if they could bring their chairs up here and then face the audience. Tim last time, and he graced us with his presence.
Better about graced with the presence. I'm happy to be up here to join these excellent candidates with question and answer. I don't have any prepared remarks. I'm very happy to be endorsed again by the Sierra Club. I'm a member of the legislature. I've been a member for a number of years. When the Democratic Party caucus I had a majority. I was chairman for a couple of terms. During that period of time when I was chairman, we had a few issues that came up that your group was interested in. One was fracking, of course. We had an opportunity in some people's eyes to enter into lease agreements with, I think it was infraction at the time, and there was a lot of pressure back then to move forward because we had such a tough time with our budget. I decided at the time to kind of put the brakes on it. I held a large community committee, a hearing where we had several rooms available, and we heard from the community. The community was not in favor, in my opinion, and we put the brakes on. That. So we never did enter into a lease agreement for the lease of our county-owned property, our parks, our landfill, which was on the table at the time, and which we stopped when I was the chairman. There were other initiatives that we had during the time in which I was chairman. We had now, oftentimes a chairman or a majority will find items to emphasize. We would have annually a recognition, a green initiative recognition. So if there are companies, they could apply for our recognition annually, and if they were doing something special over and above the basics of being environmentally sensitive, they could present an application to us, and we would bring them in front of the community and recognize them for whether it be something simple like paper reduction or using, or changing out their light bulbs to be more efficient. Simple things that together as a community make a difference, I think. So we made an effort. It was discontinued after there was a change in the politics, but for a period of time we recognized those in the community that we think did well by us and did well by the environment and the beautiful place in which we live. So I hope that we get back to that, and we have some excellent candidates this year, and I hope that you get out on November 6th and support them with your vote, because I'm really encouraged listening to all of their stories. It's really amazing. I've really never seen such a wealth of talent, especially in this in the environmental field. So I'm really I'm happy just to be in their company tonight. Thank you very much.
We're going to take questions, but I just want to preface the question period with a few notes about some of the issues we've already touched on. Broome County becoming a climate-smart community, renewable energy is an emphasis we need to be making, energy efficiency, future flooding. And then there's a number of other issues in Broome County. I don't want to put this into your head, but if there's an issue here that interests you, you want to have a question on, some of these include the Binghamton-JC Joint Sewage Plant, plastic bag use. I mean, we go to the grocery stores and other stores and we get plastic bags here in the county. Do we need to do that? Broome County Transit, how is that working for people in need? Is it sufficient? There's been a reduction in recycling markets. It's affecting the county, and we've had some harmful algal blooms in the county as well. And what's also been mentioned is this compressed natural gas that's coming through our county, and there's always some pressure to put more of this infrastructure in place. So I'm going to ask Chris Rounds, who's a better facilitator than I am, to handle questions. So, and you can direct your question to someone in particular or to anyone that wants to answer it. How's that? Is that going to work? Okay. Thanks, Chris.
Larry, could you stand up so that people back can hear you?
I'm interested to learn more about the BAE site and the proposal for the solar farm. I don't understand who today owns that property and what is the process for the decision making of what will actually happen to it.
Right, so it's in the hands, okay, thank you. It's in the hands of the agency, a poorly named group that used to be known as the IDA, because we always have to say that every time we say it. The IDA is the Industrial Development Agency of Broome County. They own the land now. It was all cleaned up. It was a top secret site, so they had a lot of work went into cleaning it up. They are charged with figuring out what the best use is in many different ways, not just economic, but also community. And they really are trying to look at it, I think, from every angle. They've brought in a few consultants from somewhere outside of the immediate area, but they specialize in former federal sites, I think. There are certain, as to who owns it isn't quite as important as what the heck they're going to do with it, okay? They need to decide what we're going to do with it. I just recently had a casual conversation with the woman who's kind of in charge with it, which is Stacy Duncan. That they are revisiting the ideas that have come up and they're trying to find out who to call back. I went with Adam Flint, Gay Cano, and one of her subcontractors to just talk about, could we build a full-on solar farm here? Because you got to keep in mind, if it floods, we can't displace that water. It needs to stay floodplain, or at least the vast majority of it. So putting a building on there doesn't make a lot of sense, because you'd either have to build the building up on stilts, build it up on a ramp, and what about parking? Like, you're gonna be displacing a lot. So I personally don't see how we could do any sizable building. Yeah,
May I
sure.
add something
Yeah.
to that? When you're done.
Okay, so with that in mind, I think solar has a great prospect for this place, because we could put the solar panels up on stilts 10 to 12 feet. Also, Gowdy Station is right there. It's a very special situation, because Gowdy Station could take a tremendous input to the grid. That is not normally the case. If we just did this anywhere else, it wouldn't work. So I think it's a special situation. Gay Cano, even from ATM Solar, went so far as to talk to BU. And BU is, at least off the record, very interested. It would do about half of their electrical needs if we put in a 25-acre site. And that's incredible. Yeah, and what's neat, I think one of the reasons BU is so interested is the university system has a mandate to cut its emissions. And if any one school, whatever one school does counts toward all the schools. So they see this as like, wow, we could cover a bunch of schools with one project. And like, that's great. The thing is, we have to prove our case. We've put forward what we believe is a good idea. They need their time to think about it. Like I said, even a project that everyone agrees on can take years. So I've been asking what's going on, are we there yet, but they said soon we should know more, and hopefully we'll get called back and tell them more about our plans. I would like to pass it off to Suzy.
Thank you. Thank you for all that. And I totally agree with what he said. One of my additions to that idea is a solar farm, which also serves as a parking lot, right? So the solar panels are the roof over your cars, and then we have shuttles taking you to either the pharmacy school or over the river to the university. So it serves a dual purpose. It can indeed be flooded, use permeable pavement, and then hooking it up to the Gowdy station is just ideal. So it's really a perfect site for this, and then it can also be used. We could have a training center there, a small research building or something that could be used so that students could then come and learn from this experience.
Definitely.
I just wanted to, this was one of the issues that was very important to me when I ran for town council 4 years ago. And I contacted Gay Cano at the time, and she actually had plans for that site. And they were very impressive. So it has been a long time. It's been over 4 years. That's for sure. It's probably longer than that, but it's at least 4 years. So it's time. Yeah.
It's time. And we could have a coffee shop next to the parking lot, right? Economic development.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
I am concerned about the trucks, which I know Fenton was great to stop that. But those trucks are still going by. They go down Route 26, right by where I go. I get behind them all the time. I just want to know this: can the county can't do anything about that? Can the legislature do anything to stop the trucks? And also they'll have the argument, well, if you don't want pipelines, we'll give you trucks. And I mean, I just don't see how something is not, I believe, I was totally against fracking, I always have been. I don't see how we're going to be able to stop some kind of a mechanism of trying to get the gas to market. And I'd just like to know what the county can do about it.
Sure.
County legislature or the Garner or anybody.
Well, I'll chime in a little bit. So, that I don't know what the county can control over that, because it's like a DOT situation, I think. But that was one of the concerns with the location in Fenton, is that those trucks, they fly around with that compressed gas, and they were concerned about an accident. I will say that another point. We did reach out to the legislators, and we reached out to Cindy O'Brien, we reached out to Mike Sobchak, asking, can the county help us in Fenton can you guys step in? And Cindy O'Brien initially did respond and say she was against it, but then she fell off the grid. She didn't want any part of it. And Mike Sapchak never responded ever. So again, we, at least if you can't help, try to connect the people to someone who can, or have the courage to say, like, I can't get involved because I don't have any control over this. But not responding to the needs of the public is unacceptable. But people that are currently serving, is there anything that the county can do with regards to trucking? Do you know?
Road use agreements, but it might be a town, I mean, it depends on who owns the road, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, right, I mean, we're talking about New York Route 26, which is not a county road. I mean, we do have county roads out there, which we have control over, but New York Route 26, if there's some traffic, you know, I'm not sure, I'm really not sure whether we can do too much about that.
I think what's important is that these people here will look into it and will do what we can. So if it's, for example, aquifer protection laws, local laws such as that could have precedence over the DOT or whatever. So things like critical environmental areas, so things that Cindy Westerman, I forgot to mention Cindy earlier, one of my favorite people and mentors, and Julian Shepard worked very hard to identify critical environmental areas in the county. So these type of things can take precedence.
Oh, yeah.
And yes, in reference to,
You speak up a little bit.
in reference to what's happening with the virtual pipeline compressed gas trucks, I just want to let you know, you were mentioning that you wondered what happened with NG Advantage and to keep an eye on them. I live in Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania, and they bought 63 acres in my county, in Springville, south of Montrose, and they're planning to build their facility there. So you don't have to worry in Fenton or nearby any longer. They now have complete access in Susquehanna County, but they will be driving, from what I understand, into New York and through that area and through the county. So something to be concerned about.
What was your community's response to them?
At this
going
point, basically nothing, because it's a very pro-gas county, and they hardly have any resistance except for a handful of people. So they will be given a wide open welcome from what I can see. And we have another company is now also coming in called Pentagon, and they have property about 20 acres near New Milford on the eastern part of our county, and they're doing the same type of operation. So you'll have it on the eastern part of our county, the western part of our county, besides also another one in our county, which is Forest Lake. So we'll have 3 of them with all their dozens of trucks, 24/7, carrying their compressed gas. So something needs to be done, especially in New York, if you can close the borders.
Use the environmental impact statement process to fight against that. The environmental impact statement process would allow you to have public comment if they're doing it correctly. And then if there are 3 of them, even if they're not the same agency or the same company that's building them, it's something called cumulative impacts would say you have to address those impacts. So
We have nothing like that in Pennsylvania because it's wide open and total welcome.
But
New Yorkers have it, but PA does not.
they have no federal permits to approve with the energy
Donna says
plan.
no.
They don't have that kind of review process.
They don't have seeker like we do, but if there's any federal permit, then indeed they have to follow an EIS if there's any type of federal approval.
But what federal agency would they be going before?
I would think with energy, there would be some type of
Do
energy.
you find that they may be cooperative to the Pennsylvania and the natural gas
I don't know.
community?
It's basically up to New York.
Okay, we need
You
to
will
move
have
on.
to
I
help
see
us.
3 hands here.
Yeah, could you, I know you've touched on it, but say something more about, just getting over it, called about what would be the most important benefits, in your opinion, from if Broome County becomes a climate smart community?
Well, I think that, I think Donna can also speak to that as well. but I think that, would you like to, I think that you know the most about it, right?
Yeah, I'm happy to, I'm certainly happy to give you just the 101 on this. In order to become a climate smart community, I think so far 19 or 20 counties in the state have signed up for this designation, and a couple of hundred smaller municipalities. I think I mentioned earlier the Village of Whitney Point. There's on the DEC website, you can see all the places in every part of the state that have signed on, and there's an aspirational part of it where I aspire to do this, and you have to basically do some benchmarking. You need to do an analysis of your energy load and an assessment of the potential you might have to become more sustainable, to look at resilience, depending on what your vulnerability might be. Some communities are different, obviously, than others. We have a huge flood risk, so that's a high order of focus for us. After you've done some basics, the legislature has to pass a climate smart resolution, and it basically says we are committed to doing the following 10 things. I can't recite those 10, but I've already given some. 10 things. By the way, don't you just love this bunch? A prepared group. Build a climate smart community. Again, do an inventory of emissions. Decrease energy use. Shift to clean, renewable energy. Use smart materials management. This isn't rocket science stuff. This is if we were running things, we'd be doing this anyway, it's basic. Enhance community resilience to climate change. Support a green innovation economy. Amen to that one. Inform and inspire the public. Engage in an evolving process of climate change. All they would have had to have done was pass a resolution saying, we're going to do this. Where they get goofed up is that they provide a sample preamble. And the first preamble, which all of this can be amended to your unique county's sensibilities, but the particular sample that went out started with, whereas the town, village, county of X believes that climate change poses a real and increasing threat to our local and global environments and is primarily due to the burning of fossil fuel. So you can see how that might have had a chilling effect, and it does go on to provide some other climate rhetoric you and I would probably be perfectly comfortable with, but others have not. So for reasons that only perhaps Mr. Reynolds and perhaps you might be able to explain, not you, Mr. Reynolds, sorry, the other Mr. Reynolds, the chair of the legislature, for some reason they have not seen fit to just simply reword the preamble, and I think they were offered that language by the county executive that actually removed the word climate from the preamble entirely and just focused on the very smart practices that are involved with this. So once they were to do this, they would be eligible to apply for those regional council dollars. There's a funding pool. Last year it was almost $9 million that counties applied for. They applied for assessment grants, or if they'd already done an assessment, they could apply for specific remediation dollars. One place is moving a town hall out of the flood zone. Another place is shoring up a town. They're doing river work. It's very basic stuff. So anyway, these folks, at least the folks who are running against some folks who have been blocking this, are to be congratulated. But maybe you could shed some light on what the problem is.
Thank you, Donna. Yeah, this is something I've worked on over the last, I don't know, probably 2 years or so. You should know that you have to pass this, as Donna says. There's also a long list. In fact, I brought my spreadsheet of things that you need to implement to get points, which allow you to then, if you've passed the resolution, they certify you at a certain gold, bronze, silver kind of thing. And then you are eligible for different types of and different amounts of grants. We've actually probably have enough points.
We do.
Yes, we do.
So the problem has been this resolution, and I can't really tell you exactly what part, because I myself have pared this down to about as low as it will go. I don't know how much it's the words, or there's a fear, there's a boogeyman fear, that because it seems so innocuous, I think that some people feel it must do more than just say something. That is my impression from others. And it's no one particular person. They just, in the state of our politics, when one side doesn't understand the other, there becomes miscommunication, fear, And we see a lot of fear. And I think there's fear surrounding this, even when it's pared down. I'm not exactly sure why. It hasn't been completely pushed through. And the reason I haven't just made a grandstand with it is I don't really want it to fail. When one thing fails, it doesn't usually come back. That's my experience after 4 years of doing this. I'd prefer it pass, you know? So that's why people say, well, just push it.
Do you feel like there's some way that, do you feel that there's some way, because it has the word climate, and then of course this preamble had fossil, that it's been politicized in a way that is keeping, maybe keeping the legislature from making a decision, because, you know, there are maybe more conservative voters might take offense to it, and then it looks as though there's a capitulation to a progressive movement.
I don't know. All I know is there seems to be some fear surrounding it, and my goal in the legislature is to pass things and get them implemented. I don't find arguing over it. What really impresses me is that behind the scenes, we've pretty much implemented what we need to implement.
Right.
And that, to me, is one of the most important things, is at least we're headed the right direction. I do wish we could just pass this thing and get some extra grants.
So what's the next step to passing it?
Voting all of you guys in.
Just got the
Sorry.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to follow up on that. The Climate Smart Plan sounds a lot of it aspirational, but what I would like to see the county do is actually have an action plan, a climate action plan with specific goals. And this is more of a statement than a question, but the city of Binghamton has done it. They have a plan. I'm not quite sure how much they're following it, but do you have any comments about that? Or?
And I'm sure Jason does too. We've both been involved with this project. I've been for 18 months and Jason longer. But in order to apply for the Climate Smart Community, you have to say you've done all of these things to achieve certain points, and so that they show you're committed to it. And then, what are you going to work on? So it's very specific, checklist after checklist, and you could break it down: recycling, waste prevention, the promotion of local agriculture, farmers markets, the promotion of new sustainable businesses, resiliency, what?
Hybrid buses.
Hybrid buses, fleet management, light bulb, changing your light bulbs, building envelopes, the whole 9 yards, and it's broken down page by page, and that spreadsheet goes on for pages, and we have achieved, I mean, I know by 1999 we had achieved a lot of that.
Right.
And then how much have we progressed since then? A lot of good things have been done, but we could have done so much more. But there's been a lull and a stall, and I have to just add that both Barb and Jason have been very gracious toward the current legislature that has refused to entertain this. And literally, I wasn't in the meeting, but staff that were in the meeting when this was brought to them, they said, we're not going to bring that forward because climate change is a hoax. So in a community that experienced 2 devastating floods, and it's not just our community, we know that, we, you know, say, wow, we dodged that bullet when Florida or Carolina gets hit. We don't want to live that way. We want to make changes on the global level and on the local level to plan for these changes. But you're exactly right. They're very specific, and we will implement every single one of those if we're voted in.
Hi, my name is Bob. I've been following weather and climate for many years, and just a few startling facts. Like just 3 years ago, we had a December here that was warmer than the average in November. The average temperature was 40 degrees when normal is about 27. And the last 2 Februaries, we hit in 2017, we did something I never thought would happen, hit 70 degrees at the Broome County Airport, which is the equivalent of maybe mid-70s in town, and 66 was the all-time record. And then this year, it hit 69 in February, and for our second warmest day. And also, we've shattered a lot of precipitation records in this decade alone. Just about half of all the monthly precipitation records have been set in this decade. And I've noticed, I've been following the weather since I was a kid at the beginning of the 70s, and I noticed like we have a lot of anomalies. Like we had 3 feet of snow a year and a half ago one day in mid-March, and the previous record had only been 24 inches. And these are just examples. I could go on and put you all to sleep. But anyway, it's just symbolic of all across the country and world that something is up. The climate is changing, and just in this decade alone, we've had many more record high temperatures than record low. We've had some periods of cold, like February 2015, but then that's followed just 10 months later by the warmest December, and there's definitely stuff going on, and that's just what I wanted to mention.
Yeah, I'd like to respond to that, because having lived in the country for the last almost 40 years, so, and I don't know how many of you live in a rural part of the county, but we got very used to, for probably the first 25 years, a certain cycle that you had this expectation. January, there would be a thaw. There would be like sort of like 4 days or a week where you'd have the January thaw.
Oh yeah,
and then
on the 25th.
Yeah, and
it
then
spoils your school break.
And then, but then it would get cold again, and then someday in February, there'd be a whiff of the southern spring air come up.
Yeah, around February 20th.
Yeah, I know. And then and then March was always mud season.
Oh yeah,
and, right? And you just would have focuses, and then you'd start like, oh my God, it's the peepers, and they would come sort of toward the end, and there was just this very, very definitive sort of cycle. Not that there weren't a barren events, but that is gone. It is. I mean, we had snowpack on Tracy Creek Road, 3 to 4 inches from somewhere in December till February. It's all gone, that cycle. Those predictable cycle of what the weather is and our interaction with the weather is over. And the song I sing now is, it's the end of the world as we know it. I mean, I'm not saying it's the end of the world, but as we know it, it's changing.
As we know it. It'll change back.
After the ice.
Where did I hear?
I'm concerned about the recycling, and there was a news article that said 75% of stuff that's could be recycled is now ending up in landfills because there's no market. What can we do to address that? Because Broome County was big recycling, and I was always proud to brag about that to all my friends. And now, what good is it doing?
I'd be happy to take this one, because I even brought it up that I would want to revisit our programs and address them. One of the last projects before I left the county was a waste prevention grant that I wrote to the state. And it was a 3-year grant with seasonal messages via radio, newspaper, if you can imagine, back then, before the internet. And the whole idea was, instead of us trying to manage these wastes, because the markets are going to change over time, can we prevent these wastes? This is what the legislature said to me, and I would guess that's what they would say now until we get people like this. Well, why do we want all that money going out into the airwaves? That doesn't make any sense. The money should stay in the community. And I was like, well, the grant money that we receive will go, yes, the radio stations will get it, but then they'll pay their people and then they'll go and buy lunch. Like, I didn't know how to respond to that. They said, no, we're going to reject this $300,000 grant and send it back to Albany because we think it'd be better used for bigger recycling bins. And they sent it back. I got a call from the DEC, from the head of the DEC, solid waste, and he's like, all right, Susie, I know you guys are always on the cutting edge, but you're sending back the money? You're sending back money to Albany? I'm like, yeah, aren't we cool? So this is the type of political baloney that is happening right now because there's only one Dan, one Jason, and two other good people, Mary Kaminsky and Mark Whalen.
And Bob Wessler.
And Bob Wessler.
And Bob Wessler, yes, that are working at the county level to address these issues. But the county legislature as it stands is so imbalanced, 11 Republicans, 4 Democrats, nothing's getting done. I also might want to mention 13 men, 2 women, but, you know, that's
There's
another
8
story.
women running this year.
We'd like our county to look like, our county legislature to look like our county residents and to think like our county residents like you do. And I would work toward waste prevention. We cannot rely on the markets any longer, and we're going to have to think ourselves out of this problem.
Could I follow up a little bit?
Yeah.
You know, recycling is something I've thought about a lot lately. I mean, I'm 46, but I have a lot of friends. I own a restaurant myself, and have a lot of employees who are considerably younger than me, and I don't think they remember what I remember from the incinerator battle and recycling and a lot of it. When I watch them come over to my house and attempt to recycle, it is not good. They throw everything in the recycling bin, things that are not recyclable. I think we've got a really serious problem in recycling from the ground up, which is, it is hard to imagine that bin that comes back turned into recyclable stuff. It's all contaminated. It might have a recyclable jar, but it's still got peanut butter in it. And I think we're learning now that, because of the Chinese law, that we may not have been recycling the way we thought we were. We were sending it to China, and we were all feeling really good about ourselves. And it really wasn't being done. I mean, that's a pretty harsh statement for me to say, but I've watched, when I did work at the Department of Energy, I watched cleaning crews come in and dump recycling bins into the garbage because it was late at night and they did not care. Okay, like although office workers went home feeling good about what they'd done, meanwhile, the low-paid workers come in at night and basically undo it. And it was just easier for them. And they didn't see it as any different. And now when I watch young people try to recycle, it's not going well. It makes me really fear for single-stream recycling.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time in Vancouver, British Columbia, and they've moved to an even more elaborate system where they have like 4 bins outside your house. So there's a bin for glass and paper and hard plastics, and then there's soft plastics like cellophane and wrappings, and then there is yard waste and food scraps. And so and this is on a major scale, like on a major city scale, where they've gone, even because they're finding that even recycling food waste and yard waste can really reduce the amount of stuff going into the dump or the landfill. We used to call it the dump, but now we call it the landfill.
We need to focus definitely on the food. And
Food is huge.
Yeah.
Oh, and food, yeah.
Food is huge. We talked about earlier, 1/3. But talking with Canada again, they charge double for recycling as far as for beer bottles, for example. And those beer bottles go back, and then they go back to the beer company, and they recycle them again and again. So, you know, things like that is how do we find items, and what are other countries doing to reuse smartly?
Innovatively.
Innovatively. You just study and research. There's ways to do it. It's just, we don't have the answer, but I think we need to do research and find the answers. But that's one simple thing, is find something that's reusable, send it back to the company so they can use it again.
Definitely. There are a lot of good options out there.
I was going to ask you something, Mark, and if I still can. You brought up the county not having a Department of Agriculture. Now, a few years ago, a previous administration implemented I think it was called Department of Energy Development, and it didn't last. because there was really no need for it if we're not fracking in this county. But what can we do to make a Department of Agriculture last if we implement that? You want to take that on?
Sure.
A committee.
First of all, a committee, exactly. But again, agriculture is one of New York State's most economic developed areas. We bring more money in from agriculture than any other industry, but yet we don't talk about it here as a community. I think if we talk about it, you know, you look at our local restaurants and how much they want to talk about local sustainability. Back in September, the agriculture had students come in and prepare fresh farm foods. So the legislature understands the importance of local, but we're not talking about it on a regular basis. We need to talk about it, see what our farmers need, you know, bring them in, look for grant money to help the farmers be more sustainable. It's really a great living. And if you look with our schools now, Windsor Central School is looking to buy a huge piece of land and make agriculture a major part of their education now. You know, as far as not only just for growing, but as far as repairs and mechanical drawing, all stuff that are very important to agriculture. So I think the county can help with that because it is a viable economic, not just for growing, but for other avenues. So I think we can help sustain it because I think that is a future that even our schools are starting to embrace.
Okay. Great, thanks. We need to wrap it up because these are real busy people. However, if any of you wanted to say something that you didn't get a chance to say, I'm going to hand you the mic. You're all good? Then, well, let's thank them for coming. A couple of reminders. There is a sheet back there on the table. If you want to give us your email address, we will be forwarding. Yeah.